That was pretty much how our timing worked lately. I would be in the middle of trying to fix something, and she would arrive already looking like I had done something wrong. Her white SUV pulled into the cracked lot fast enough to kick dust across my drop cloth. I was standing on a stepladder outside the old garage, holding a brush in one hand and a bent paint can in the other. The place still looked rough. The old roadside sign was faded down to ghost letters. The concrete out front had cracks wide enough for weeds. Inside, you could see my half-built counter, two stools from a thrift store, a borrowed coffee machine under a tarp, and bike tools spread across an old workbench. I had been staring at it all day, trying to see what it could become. Madison saw what it was. She got out wearing dark sunglasses, clean jeans, and a cream sweater that looked like it cost more than my front windows. She stopped before she even reached me and looked down at the gravel. Seriously, Noah? I wiped my hand on my already ruined shirt. Hey. Don't hey me. I texted you 3 times. I saw them. I was trying to finish this side before dark. She looked at the garage door, then at the brush in my hand. That color is awful. It's primer. The real color goes on tomorrow. That makes it better? I climbed down from the ladder slowly, because I knew if I moved too fast, I would say something dumb. Madison, I told you I had to work here this weekend. The soft opening is in 2 weeks. She let out this little laugh, not loud, just sharp enough to make me feel like I had missed a joke everyone else understood. Soft opening, she said. For what exactly? A place where people can get coffee and tetanus. I looked back at the building. The garage doors were ugly, sure. The trim was still chipped. One front window had a cloudy film I could not get off no matter how many times I cleaned it. But I had replaced 2 rotten boards that morning. I had patched the back wall. I had fixed the sink myself. None of that showed from where she stood. It's getting there, I said. It's always getting there. She took off her sunglasses and looked me up and down. You smell like paint. I've been painting. And oil. It was an auto garage. And dirt. I breathed in through my nose and stared at the ground for a second. Across the fence, the nursery next door was quiet except for the soft clank of somebody moving pots. Tessa's place always smelled like wet soil and cedar chips. Mine smelled like old rubber, coffee grounds, and whatever Hope smelled like when it had no money behind it. Madison folded her arms. We were supposed to meet Jenna and Adam for drinks. That was tonight? Yes, Noah. Tonight. The thing I reminded you about all week. I rubbed the back of my neck. There was blue paint near my elbow, and I saw her notice it like it offended her personally. I can clean up, I said. Give me 20 minutes. She looked at the shop again. No. You can't. That's the whole point. You don't clean up anymore. You just drag this place around with you. Your clothes, your truck, your apartment, all of it. I laughed once, but there was no humor in it. My apartment is above the garage. Exactly. That one landed harder than I wanted it to. The apartment above the shop was small and smelled like sawdust because half the floor still needed trim. But it was mine. The garage was mine. The loan, the repairs, the stress, all mine. I had delivery shifts during the week, and at night I came here and worked until my hands cramped. I kept telling myself, 1 more month. 1 more month, and it would look real. Madison stared at me like she was tired of waiting for real. I'm trying, I said. I know it's not pretty yet. It's not about pretty. She stepped closer. Lowering her voice like that somehow made it less cruel. I'm tired of pretending this little project is a future. I stood still. She kept going because Madison never liked silence when she could fill it. I'm tired of acting like it's cute that you're broke and exhausted and covered in paint every time I see you. I want to go to nice restaurants without wondering if you're checking your bank app under the table. I want trips. I want a clean place. I want a man who isn't always asking me to believe in something that looks like failure. The brush in my hand felt stupid all of a sudden, like a toy, like I was a kid painting a cardboard house and calling it a business. I didn't ask you to fund it, I said. No, you just asked me to respect it. I looked at her, and for a second I saw the part of her that was not evil, just frustrated. She wanted a life that looked finished from the outside. She wanted someone who could walk into a rooftop bar without sawdust in his hair and a debit card that made him nervous. Maybe that was fair for her. It still hurt. I thought you knew what this meant to me, I said. I do know. That's the problem. She put her sunglasses back on, even though the sun was low now. Call me when you're done playing business owner. Then she got in her SUV and backed out hard, gravel popping under her tires. I stood there after she left, holding that brush, with the garage door half covered and the evening getting cold. A truck went by on the road, then another. I could see my reflection in the cloudy front window, paint on my shirt, hair messed up, shoulders sagging. For the first time in weeks, I looked at the place and did not see the plan. I saw the cracks, the crooked sign, the stained concrete, the cheap stools, the old garage smell I had not beaten yet. Maybe she was right. Maybe I had bought a dump and dressed it up in a dream because it was easier than admitting I had no real shot. You know, a voice called from the other side of the fence. That door does look terrible. I turned. Tessa was leaning against the low cedar fence between our lots, holding 2 plastic cups of iced coffee. She had dirt on one forearm and her dark hair tied back with a green bandana. She was 37, owned the nursery next door, and always looked like she had already done more work before lunch than most people did all day. I blinked at her. Thanks. I mean, not forever terrible. Just today, terrible. She lifted 1 cup. Want this before you start making eye contact with the building like it owes you money? I walked over because I did not have a better idea. She handed me the coffee through the fence. You heard all that? I asked. Enough to know I should pretend I didn't. But you're not going to. No. She took a sip from her own cup. I'm not that polite. I almost smiled. Almost. Tessa looked past me at the garage. It has good bones. I followed her eyes. Everybody says that when something looks bad. Not me. I sell plants in cracked pots for a living. I know the difference between dead and unfinished. I held the cold cup against my palm. Madison thinks it's embarrassing. She likes finished things, Tessa said. Some people do. They show up when the counters are polished and the lights are warm and there's a line outside. Those people are useless when the ceiling leaks. I looked at her. She shrugged. No offense to your girlfriend. You can probably offend her from here. She's gone. Tessa smiled, but not in a way that made fun of me. Look, I'm not saying this place is cute. It needs work. A lot of work. That sign is 1 windstorm away from becoming somebody's problem. Your front windows look like they smoked for 40 years. And that primer color is a personal attack. I laughed then, quiet but real. But, she said, pointing her cup at the building, it has shape. It has space. It sits right by the road. Cyclists already pass here every morning. And you're out here after dark doing the ugly part most people skip. I swallowed and looked back at the garage. Nothing had changed. The concrete was still cracked. My tools were still everywhere. The door still looked bad. But standing there with cold coffee in my hand, hearing one person talk about it like it was possible and not pathetic, I felt something loosen in my chest. Tessa tapped the fence once. Don't ruin it by listening to people who only like finished things. Then she walked back toward the nursery, leaving me there with the fading light and the half-painted door. I stood for another minute before I picked up the brush again. The garage still looked rough, but it did not look dead. Over the next week, I started seeing Tessa before I saw my own coffee most mornings. Her nursery opened early, and she was always out there dragging hoses across gravel, lining up plants on wood tables, or arguing with the delivery driver about where mulch was supposed to go. I would come down from the apartment above the garage with my hair wet, work boots untied, and my delivery app already buzzing, and there she'd be, moving like the day had no right to surprise her. The first time I helped her, I did it because her greenhouse door kept slamming in the wind. I was loading a toolbox into my truck when I heard it bang 3 times in a row. Tessa came around the corner, carrying a tray of small lavender plants, looked at the door, and said, "I'm going to pretend that didn't just test my patience." "You want me to look at it?" I asked. She glanced at my truck. "Don't you have packages to throw on people's porches?" "I've got 10 minutes. You always say that, like 10 minutes is real. It's real if the screws aren't stripped. They were stripped. So 10 minutes became 30, and I ended up kneeling in the dirt with my drill, swapping out the latch while Tessa stood above me, holding the door steady with one hand and drinking coffee with the other. "You fix things like you're mad at them," she said. "I'm usually mad at them." "That explains the garage." I looked up at her. "You're not done insulting my building?" "No, I'm pacing myself." After that, it became normal in a way I didn't expect. I would tighten something for her, and she would hand me coffee. I would move a stack of heavy planters, and she would show up later with a broom and tell me my front window looked like it had given up in 1998. She wasn't gentle about the shop, but it didn't feel like Madison's kind of criticism. Madison looked at the place like she wanted me to apologize for it. Tessa looked at it like a problem with answers. On Tuesday night, after my delivery shift, I found her standing outside my front windows with a spray bottle, a razor scraper, and a face like she had declared war. "You breaking in?" I asked. "Your windows are embarrassing me from next door." "That sounds like a you problem." It became an us problem when your cloudy glass started reflecting on my hanging baskets. I unlocked the door and let her in. The shop smelled like old wood, fresh paint, and coffee grounds from my test batches. The counter was still half built. The sink worked only if I turned the handle just right, and I had one wall painted a color I was no longer sure about. Tessa walked around slowly, not touching anything at first. "I'd change this green," she said. "That's not green. It's sage. It's hospital soup." I leaned against the counter. "That's not a color. It is when it's bad." She went back to her nursery and came over 20 minutes later with 3 paint cards, 2 rags, and a plant in a clay pot. The plant had soft silver leaves and looked too calm for my place. "What's that?" "A peace offering for the doorway." I didn't know we were fighting. "We are if you keep using hospital soup." She helped me scrub the front glass until both our arms hurt. There was some old film baked onto the inside, probably from years of smoke, grease, and weather. Tessa worked at one corner with the scraper while I wiped circles with cleaner. Outside, cars passed on the road. Inside, the lights buzzed and the counter brackets sat on the floor, still in their package. For almost an hour, neither of us talked much. That was what surprised me. Madison hated silence with me. She filled every gap with plans, complaints, questions, or reminders of things I hadn't done yet. With Tessa, quiet didn't feel like failure. It just felt like work. When we finally got one window clear enough to see through, she stepped back and nodded. "There," she said. "Less haunted." I looked through the glass at the road, the mountains behind it, and the nursery's row of maples shifting in the wind. "Yeah," I said. "That's better." My phone buzzed on the counter. "Madison, Jenna got us a table Friday. Please wear something decent." A second later, she sent a photo. Rooftop bar, little string lights, fancy drinks lined up on a table. Everyone clean, smiling, finished. Then, another text came in. "Madison, are you still doing the garage thing all weekend?" I stared at it too long. Tessa noticed, but she didn't ask. She just picked up the paint cards and held them against the wall. "This one," she said, "warm white. Makes old wood look intentional." Intentional is a big promise. Then don't ruin it. I put my phone face down. By Thursday, I had fixed her hose line where it leaked near the potting shed. She had helped me move 2 thrift store tables inside the shop and made me admit one of them leaned too badly to use. Friday morning, I helped load bags of soil into her truck for a weekend market in Redmond. She climbed into the bed of the truck and stacked them better after I thought I was done. "You're bossy," I said. "I'm efficient." "You call it that?" "I own a nursery. I call everything whatever keeps it alive." That afternoon, Madison called while I was replacing trim around the front door. "You're coming tonight, right?" she asked. I pressed the phone between my shoulder and ear and kept measuring. "I'm trying." "That means no. It means I have to finish this before the weather changes." She went quiet, but not the peaceful kind. "Noah, people are starting to ask if you're still doing the garage thing." "The garage thing is the business." "You know what I mean." I held the tape measure against the doorframe and closed my eyes for a second. "No," I said. "I don't think I do." She sighed like I was making her tired on purpose. "I just wish you cared how this looks." I almost said, "I care so much I barely sleep. I care so much my hands ache every morning. I care so much I eat gas station sandwiches in my truck because every spare dollar goes into this place." But I didn't. I just said, "I have to go." That night, the counter brackets were missing 2 bolts, because of course they were. I was standing in the shop, staring at the open package, like it had personally betrayed me when Tessa knocked on the frame of the door. "Hardware store?" she asked. "How did you know?" "You had the expression of a man about to try duct tape as a business strategy." We took her truck because mine had a stack of bike tires in the back. The hardware store was almost empty, bright and cold, with that rubber and lumber smell that made me feel both hopeful and broke. Tessa walked ahead of me, reading labels fast, pulling boxes off shelves, putting half of them back. "You need better brackets than these," she said. "I need cheaper brackets than those. You need the counter not to fall on someone's knees." That is also on the list. We argued over screws, paint samples, and whether the front door needed a brass handle or a black one. She said black. I said brass looked warmer. She held both up and said, "Warm doesn't matter if it looks like a dentist office from 1983. So black won. Afterward, we got tacos from a truck parked near the gas station and ate in her cab with the windows cracked. My hands smelled like metal and salsa. She had sauce on her thumb and didn't notice until I pointed it out. She laughed and wiped it with a napkin. "Very classy." I wasn't judging. You were absolutely judging. I've been judged professionally all week. I'm branching out. She looked over at me then, and her smile softened just a little. "Madison?" I leaned back against the seat. "Yeah. You don't have to tell me." "I know." For a minute, we just watched a couple of teenagers on skateboards roll past the gas pumps. "She wants a life that looks better than mine does right now," I said. Tessa nodded. "That's not a crime." "No. But it's hard to build anything besides someone who keeps asking why it isn't done." That hit too close, so I looked down at my taco. "She had a bad business partner," Tessa said after a while. "Years ago, when I started the nursery. He wanted fast money, clean branding, big expansion. I wanted healthy plants and bills paid on time. People laughed at my first setup. Folding tables, hand-painted sign, shade cloth tied to a fence. It looked terrible. "You?" "Oh, very terrible." She smiled. "But it worked. Not quickly. Not in a way anyone clapped for. But it worked." I looked at her across the dim cab, the hardware bags between us, the smell of tacos and paint cards and dust all mixed together. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't trying to prove anything in that moment. I was just sitting there, tired, hungry, and understood. Saturday afternoon, Madison stopped by without warning. Tessa and I were outside, arranging 3 big planters by the shop entrance. She had brought them over from the nursery, saying I could pay her later or help unload her market truck twice. The new warm white paint around the windows had dried, and the old garage was starting to look less like a place people abandoned and more like a place somebody might walk into. Madison pulled in slowly this time. She got out, looked at Tessa, then at me, then at the planters. "Well," she said with a tight smile, "looks like you've got free landscaping now." The air changed so fast I felt it in my shoulders. Tessa straightened, but didn't say anything. I forced a small laugh. Tessa runs the nursery next door. She's helping me make the front look better. "I can see that." Madison's eyes moved over Tessa, then back to my paint-stained shirt. "I guess that's nice," she said. "Somebody should." The words were small, but they landed exactly where she wanted them. I looked down at the planter in my hands and pretended to adjust it. Tessa noticed. She didn't jump in, didn't make a scene, didn't rescue me. She just picked up the last clay pot, set it beside the door, and said, calm as ever, "That one needs sun in the morning. Don't overwater it." Then she walked back toward the nursery. Madison watched her go. I stood there between the two places, my unfinished shop behind me, Tessa's plants at my feet, and Madison looking like she had caught me enjoying a life she still couldn't respect. By the morning of the soft opening, I had slept maybe 3 hours and had already convinced myself 4 different things were going to fail. The coffee machine was borrowed from a guy I knew through deliveries, and it made a sound like a tired lawnmower when it warmed up. The bike stand wobbled unless I wedged a scrap of wood under one foot. The menu board still had pencil marks on it because I kept changing prices in my head. And the sign out front, the old metal one I had repainted by hand, hung just a little crooked no matter how many times I stepped back and stared at it. Still, at 7:30, I unlocked the front door. The shop smelled like fresh paint, coffee grounds, chain oil, and the cedar mulch Tessa had spread by the planters. Morning light came through the windows we had cleaned, and for once, it actually reached the floor. The cracks in the concrete were still there. The counter was still too plain. One wall still needed trim, but it worked. At least, I hoped it did. Tessa came over 5 minutes later, carrying a cardboard tray of extra paper cups and wearing a faded green hoodie with soil on the sleeve. "You look awful," she said. "Good morning to you too." "You look soft opening awful. That's different." Behind her, 2 guys on road bikes slowed near the driveway, looked at the sign, and kept rolling. My stomach dropped. Tessa noticed. They'll circle back. Cyclists love pretending they're not curious. She set the cups on the counter, then went back outside and returned with a folding shade canopy, 2 hanging baskets, and a small chalkboard sign from her nursery that said, "Coffee plus bike tune-ups today," in handwriting much better than mine. "I didn't ask you to bring half your business over," I said. "I didn't ask for your approval." "That canopy expensive?" "No. Ugly, but useful. Like your bike stand." I shook my head, but I was smiling before I could stop it. By 8, people actually started showing up. First, it was an older guy named Dale, who rode a steel frame bike and said he remembered when the garage still sold tires. Then came a woman with a flat on her commuter bike. Then the 2 road bike guys did circle back, exactly like Tessa said, and ordered black coffee like anything else would hurt their pride. For 20 minutes, I almost felt calm. Then the coffee machine tripped the breaker. The lights clicked off. The grinder died halfway through, and the shop went quiet except for somebody outside saying, "Uh-oh." I stood there with a cup in my hand and felt heat climb up my neck. "Of course," I muttered. Tessa leaned in through the doorway. "Breaker? Probably. Go. I'll keep them from forming a committee." I hurried to the back room where the panel was, stepping over a box of filters and nearly kicking a socket wrench under the sink. The breaker had flipped. I reset it, came back, and it flipped again the second the machine kicked on. I wanted to throw the whole thing into the parking lot. Instead, I unplugged the mini fridge, moved the grinder to a different outlet, and tried again. The machine grumbled, coughed, then stayed on. When I looked outside, Tessa had 3 people laughing under the canopy. She was holding up one of my unfinished flyers and saying, "He spent all his design money on making sure your brakes don't fail downhill." Dale laughed. The road bike guys laughed. Even the woman with the flat smiled. Nobody left. That did something to me. The day kept going like that. Nothing was smooth, but nothing fully fell apart. I fixed 2 flats, adjusted 1 derailleur, tightened a loose brake cable, and made enough coffee that the borrowed machine started to smell like it was considering retirement. Around 10, the front sign shifted in a gust of wind and made a metal scraping sound that got everyone's attention. I looked up. The left bolt had loosened, and the sign was hanging at an angle. Tessa appeared beside me with the ladder before I even asked. "Don't say it," I said. I wasn't going to. You were. I was going to say it quietly. I climbed up with a wrench while she held the ladder steady. Below us, a small line had formed at the counter, and a teenager was taking a picture of the front of the shop like it was a real place worth taking a picture of. "You good?" Tessa asked. "Yeah." "You sure?" I tightened the bolt and looked down. Her face was tilted up toward mine, calm, focused, sunlight catching the side of her cheek. She was not embarrassed by the crooked sign. She was not pretending it wasn't crooked either. She was just there, holding the ladder while I fixed it. "Yeah," I said again. "I'm good." By noon, the shop was louder than it had ever been. Cyclists leaned against the old brick-side wall. 2 people sat on the thrift store stools drinking coffee. Someone asked if I would be open next Saturday. Another guy said the place had character, which made me laugh because character usually meant a place needed money. But the way he said it made me believe him. For a little while, I forgot to feel behind. Then Madison arrived. She pulled in close to 1, dressed like she was already late for brunch somewhere with valet parking. Her hair was perfect, her sunglasses were perfect, and the look on her face changed the second she saw the people outside. Not surprise exactly. More like irritation. I was wiping grease off my hands when she stepped in. "Hey," I said, still a little out of breath. "You made it." She looked around the shop. Her eyes moved over the cracked floor, the borrowed coffee machine, the line of cups near the sink, the plants by the window, Tessa helping a customer choose between drip coffee and iced. "It's busy," she said. "Yeah, kind of weird, right?" I laughed because I was happy and nervous and tired, and I wanted her to see it. I wanted her to see that people had come, that the place was alive, that maybe all the late nights had not been a joke. But she didn't smile. "You have grease on your face," she said. I wiped at my cheek with the back of my hand. "Probably made it worse." "You did." Tessa glanced over from the counter, then looked away. Madison saw that too. She stayed maybe 15 minutes. She didn't order coffee. She didn't ask how the day had gone. She stood near the front window, checking her phone, while people came in and told me they liked the place. Every compliment made her jaw tighten a little more. After the last small rush passed and the shop finally thinned out, she walked outside and nodded for me to follow. I knew that nod. It had never led anywhere good. We stood near the side wall, where the old tire marks were still stained into the concrete. The sun was high, and I could hear Tessa inside stacking cups. Madison took off her sunglasses. "So this is it?" "What do you mean?" "This." She waved one hand at the shop. "You looked so happy in there." I frowned. "That's bad?" "You looked ridiculous, Noah. Running around, fixing bikes, serving cheap coffee, acting like some small-town shop owner." I stared at her. "I am trying to be a shop owner. That's what scares me." Her voice got quieter. "You don't even see how small this is." The old version of me would have tried to explain. I would have talked numbers, plans, the cyclists on the route, the apartment upstairs, the low overhead, the way the place could grow if I just got through the first months. But I was tired. and for once, I was not confused. "You didn't come here to support me," I said. She looked away. "I came because I'm still your girlfriend." "No, you came to see if it was embarrassing." Her eyes snapped back to mine. "It is embarrassing. You're choosing this dirty little project over a real life." There it was, clear, no sarcasm hiding it. No fancy bar, no missed dinner, no complaints about my clothes. Just the truth standing between us. I looked through the front window. The shop was messy. Cups everywhere. Tools on the counter. Plants near the door. Tessa picking up a fallen napkin and handing Dale his water bottle with that easy smile of hers. Then I looked back at Madison. "I'm not choosing the building over you," I said. "I'm choosing a life where I don't have to apologize for what I care about." Write in the comments, was Noah right to end things with Madison after she refused to respect his dream? Or should he have tried harder to keep the relationship while building the shop? Her face changed. For 1 second she looked hurt instead of angry, and that almost pulled me back. Almost. "You're really doing this?" she asked. "I think we've both been doing it for a while." She laughed, but it shook a little. "You'll regret this when the excitement wears off and you're stuck here alone." "Maybe," I said, "but I'm already tired of feeling alone with you." That one hurt her. I could see it, and I hated that it did. Madison was not some villain in a story. She wanted something I could not give her, and she could not respect the thing I was building instead. That was all. It was enough. She put her sunglasses back on. "Good luck with your half-dead building," she said. Then she got in her SUV and left. I stood outside until the dust settled. When I walked back in, the shop looked worse than it had an hour ago. Cups on the counter, mud near the doorway, a smear of bike grease on the floor. My hands were shaking a little, so I set them flat on the counter and breathed. The soft opening was almost over. Madison was gone. And for the first time all day, everything was quiet. A minute later, Tessa appeared in the doorway, holding a paper bag from her market booth. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't tilt her head like she felt sorry for me. She just lifted the bag. "You probably forgot to eat," she said. Tessa stayed after everyone was gone. She didn't make a big deal out of it. She just set the paper bag on the counter, pulled out 2 foil-wrapped sandwiches from her market booth, and handed me one, like that was the obvious next step after your girlfriend drove away for the last time. I stood there, with my hands still dirty, and my chest feeling hollow. "You really did remember food," I said. "No, I guessed you forgot it. That's basically remembering for me. Don't get used to it." I unwrapped the sandwich and took a bite because she was right. I had not eaten since before sunrise. The shop was quiet now, except for the low hum of the mini fridge and the occasional car passing outside. The floor had mud streaks by the door. The counter had coffee rings all over it. There were paper cups in a trash bag, bike tools scattered everywhere, and one of Tessa's plants had tipped sideways near the window. The place looked used. That felt better than I expected. Tessa rolled up her sleeves and grabbed the broom from behind the counter. "Eat, then help." "You're cleaning my shop now?" "I'm cleaning my plants that are trapped in your shop." "Fair." She swept while I ate. Then I took the trash out, stacked the folding chairs, wiped down the counter, and moved the plants inside so they wouldn't get hit by the cold night air. Tessa gathered the cups, tied the trash bag, and used a wet rag on the coffee machine, like she had been disappointed in it personally all day. For a while, we worked without talking. That silence felt different now. Heavier, but not bad. When everything was mostly reset, I leaned against the counter and looked around. The shop smelled like coffee, wet rags, plants, and grease. My shoulders ached. My hands were scratched. My throat felt tight from holding too much in. Tessa came back from locking the side door and stopped a few feet away. "She's gone?" she asked. I nodded. "Yeah. You okay?" I almost gave the easy answer. The one guys give because it keeps the room moving. Instead, I said, I don't know yet. Tessa nodded, like that was allowed. She said I was choosing this place over a real life, I said. Tessa leaned against the opposite side of the counter. Madison wanted something finished. She wanted a finished man. She may have. Tessa's voice stayed calm. But that doesn't mean you were broken. I looked down fast because that line hit harder than I expected. For months, maybe longer, I had been living like I was some rough draft of myself. Like once I had the shop open, once I had money coming in, once the apartment looked better, once I could take Madison somewhere nice without checking prices first, then I would finally be acceptable. But I was tired of being treated like a future version of me was the only one worth loving. I kept thinking I just had to catch up, I said. Like my life was always 2 steps behind everybody else's. Madison's friends were buying houses, planning trips, getting promotions. I was up here at midnight trying to fix a sink with a YouTube video and a wrench I bought used. Tessa smiled a little. I've fixed a sink that way. Did it work? Not the first time. That makes me feel worse. It shouldn't. She stepped closer and picked up a rag from the counter, folding it without needing to. The right life doesn't start only after everything is polished. I looked at her then. She wasn't trying to make herself the answer. That was what got to me. She wasn't standing there glowing like some reward for surviving Madison. She looked tired too. There was dust on her jeans, her hair was coming loose from its bandana, and she had probably worked a longer day than I had. She had her own business, her own problems, her own bills waiting in some drawer. But she was there. Not because the shop was impressive, because she respected the building part. I pushed away from the counter and took one step toward her. You should probably go before this night gets more complicated. Her eyes stayed on mine. Probably. Neither of us moved. The air between us changed slowly, like both of us were waiting for the other one to make it less honest. I could hear the mini fridge kick on behind me. Outside, a truck passed on the road, headlights sliding across the windows and then disappearing. Tessa, I said. I know. I don't want this to feel like I'm here because she left, she said. I nodded. She set the rag down. I'm here because I wanted to be here before she left. I just had better manners than to act on it. That made me laugh once, quiet and nervous. Then she stepped in, and I met her halfway. The kiss was careful at first. Not rushed. Not dramatic. Just her hand on my arm. My hand at her waist. Both of us testing the truth of what had been sitting there for weeks while we carried planters, cleaned windows, argued over paint, and ate tacos in her truck. Then it warmed. I forgot the cracked floor. I forgot the crooked sign. I forgot the way Madison had looked at me, like I was a mistake she had waited too long to correct. Tessa kissed me like I was already standing in my own life, not waiting outside, it asking permission to come in. When we pulled back, she stayed close. You okay? She asked. For once, I said, yeah. She smiled. That's a dangerous answer. I know. We locked the shop, turned off the lights, and went upstairs to the apartment above the garage. I won't dress it up more than that. It was warm. It was quiet. It felt honest. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to explain why my life looked the way it did. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. Light was coming through the small bedroom window, and for 1 second, I forgot what had changed. Then I heard movement in the kitchen area and smelled coffee. Tessa was standing by the counter in my old gray sweatshirt, drinking from a chipped mug with a bicycle on it. Her hair was messy, and she looked completely at ease in my unfinished apartment, which was unfair because I had spent months being ashamed of it. You found the coffee, I said. I found something claiming to be coffee. That's my good stuff. That's sad. I laughed and sat up, rubbing my face. She looked out the window toward the road. Your sign is still crooked. That's the first thing you say to me? No. I said your coffee was sad first. I got dressed and we went downstairs together. The morning air was cool and the road was still quiet. The shop looked different in daylight after the soft opening. Not cleaner exactly, just awake. The planters framed the entrance. The windows caught the sun. The old garage doors, finally painted the right color, didn't look perfect, but they looked cared for. Tessa held the ladder while I climbed up with the wrench. "Left side," she said. "I know. You always say that right before fixing the wrong thing." "I do not." "You absolutely do." I tightened the bolts and shifted the sign until it sat straight enough to stop bothering both of us. From the ladder, I could see the nursery next door, the road stretching toward town, and the shop below me, still rough in a dozen ways. Trim missing, concrete cracked, windows not perfect, money tight. But none of it felt like proof that I was failing. It felt like work. It felt like mine. A bike tire crunched over the gravel behind us. I climbed down as a cyclist rolled up, helmet clipped, sunglasses on, one hand resting on the handlebars. "You open?" he asked. I looked at Tessa. She gave me a small nod, like I already knew the answer. I looked back at the shop, then at the cyclist. "Yeah," I said. "We're open." I unlocked the door and pushed it wide. The bell above it gave a weak little ring I still needed to fix. The counter had scratches. The coffee machine was borrowed. The floor would never look new. But morning light came through the front windows, touching the plants, the tools, the cups, the whole unfinished place. For the first time, it didn't feel like an apology. It felt like the beginning.